And we're on and working. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I think everybody knows I hate to be late, especially when I'm waiting on somebody wonderful. Hi, Kathy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Fallon. How are you today?
I am good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Of course.
Having a great hair day.
Thank you. Yes, I am. Well, normally my hair doesn't like Georgia humidity, and it's kind of humid here in Georgia today.
Yeah.
But I think it knew that I was going to have a great conversation with you today, so it has cooperated.
You're so sweet. So if you wanted to tell us a little bit more just about your journey through law and then how you found out about brain health and how that's kind of changing everything that you're doing, which is really, really amazing.
Well, as you or some of your listeners and viewers may not know, but my name is Kathy Schrader. I have been a member of the Georgia State Bar Association for almost 34 years. And I came into the practice of law actually as a result of some childhood. Now we know it was childhood trauma. Of course, 34, 35 years ago when I went to law school, trauma wasn't defined and wasn't understood the way it is today. But as a child, I was bullied. I was born with forceps. My face has always been different when I smile, when I talk, and you'll notice that during this conversation today. Of course, we didn't have sensitivity training back when I was a child. I mean, you just dealt with it, and you dealt with it either in a positive way or a negative way. And I was blessed to have parents and grandparents pour into me about wisdom. They were helping me understand the brokenness of other people, but also establish boundaries before boundaries were even popular. And so my parents, and especially my grandmother, my great-grandmothers, they would tell me, that God made me just the way he wanted me. And when people make fun of you, it's not really about you. It's because they're hurting people hurt people. I mean, I've grown up hearing that for 50 years. So
that's so rare.
Yeah. So
amazing.
Well, actually, my mother and her only sister were nurses. So they were educated in the medical field. Mm-hmm. And so they had a little bit of awareness of some of the psychology behind why people struggle with certain medical ailments. Mm-hmm. So we fast forward, and I realized through high school, through college, I was developing skills not only to protect myself, but also kind of encouraging, protecting other people, and just resonating with helping the underdog, always, protecting the underdog. And it was a skill that I've passed on to my children and to my clients over the past 35 years, is that you have the power to treat other people with the same respect that you want to be treated, basically the golden rule. But I always dug deeper into that. And through practicing law, I was mentored by some great lawyers, but these great lawyers were just great lawyers. They didn't understand the why behind how someone was acting. Mm-hmm. In the legal profession, it's all about the facts. It's all about billable hours. And so when I first started practicing law, billable hours were important, but the legal profession wasn't a money-making profession the way it has become today. So as a young lawyer, I recognized that people who came into the office where I worked for divorces had paid no attention to their marriage. Hadn't tried to maintain their marriage, hadn't developed communication skills or anything like that I tried to learn and self-learn. And I believe, and this is one of the things that really resonated with me the first time I heard Dr. Amen speak, is he talked about lifelong learners. He's always even before, I think, the SPECT scan, scientific development, and how that has just really been such an amazing tool to help us all, help people understand the connection between learning and brain health and staying healthy and active as long as you can. You don't, just because you're 60, you don't have to be the 60-year-old grandmother sitting in a rocking chair whittling your life away. You know, right. You can be dynamic at any age now, as long as you are protecting your health. So I developed a program because it's just been second nature to me to be more holistic, more integrative with everything that I do. And I recognized early on that the legal system kind of operates in a silo. The medical profession operated in a silo. This system, the education system, operated in a silo. But what was causing the breakdown in the foundation of all of these silos was early childhood trauma.
100%. Yep.
And that was actually like, that dot became connected to me early in my professional career, because as lawyers, we have to have these continuous legal education credits. We have to have 12 hours every year. So I had procrastinated as a young lawyer, because that was one of there's just certain things you don't know until you don't know them. And my law firm never said, oh, you make sure you get your hours in, until I get this and this was way back before email and fax machines. I mean, I have grown and developed a certain practice adopting all the technology, but all of this was before technology. And so one of the last programs that were left before the end of the year was actually one on closed head injuries. See, they didn't call it traumatic brain injury back then. They called it closed head injuries. And I had studied biology, chemistry, physiology, psychology, all of that in college. None of these courses talked about how fragile the brain is, okay? And even in this course, it didn't talk about the fragility of the brain and how that impacts your emotions, your feelings, and all of that. Because again, 35, 40 years ago, you taught psychology and it was like, woo-woo, no, we don't want to go there. We don't want to, don't air your dirty laundry. Let's not talk about it. And even today, people like 45 and older, there's still this cloak of shame wrapped up in treating your mental health. I mean, it's incredible. So that's been one of the things that I've developed. So we go along, and probably in my, maybe the 6th year, 7th year of practicing law, I decided that when someone came in to see me to seek legal counsel about their failing marriage, that divorce was going to be the last resort, that I was going to take them through certain steps to address marriage health, to address communication. And, it was important to me because, I'm a woman of faith, and the practice of law to me has been as much about ministerial minded, about, helping people and restoring people rather than allowing them to destroy their lives without making sure that they are informed about all the negative consequences. So people would come to me as much for divorces as they would for marriage restoration. And so I developed this practice all along. And this is one of the things I'll share with your listeners so that they can also share this sort of visualization with a lot of their friends, neighbors, clients, patients, whatever. But as a woman who has walked through the legal system as a lawyer, as a party, and as a judge, I want people to understand that when you're driving along the road of life and there's conflict in your life, the last place you need to be is in the legal system. You need to do everything you can to stay out of the legal system. The legal system has really evolved into this weaponized, monetized area in people's lives that will steal everything that you have financially, emotionally, physically, relationally. The example that I use for people is that imagine that there is just like that, because when you are in conflict, relational conflict, either because of a marriage, a child is struggling with substance abuse, whatever the sort of outward conduct of this inward trauma is, the behavior, how the behavior is exhibiting itself. It's like a hurricane. You're in a hurricane, okay? And you're driving down the road in a hurricane. Well, I'm like the person standing in the middle of the road with a big yellow flag waving, stop here, stop here. The road is out. The road is out. Don't go any further. If you go any further, you're going to drive yourself and your family off of this road into the ravine, and you are going to enter what I call trauma town. Now,
Oh boy.
a lot of people think trauma is just like one thing, but you know, trauma town is a bad place to be. And if you can imagine, we're living in a town where every single person in that town has an objective, whether intentionally or not, to steal your money, to steal your mental health, to steal your physical health, to make sure that there are damages done to all the relationships in your life, your friends, your spouse or soon to be ex-spouse, your children, your parents, your community. Just imagine breaking everything you've worked all your life to build. That's what driving into the justice system is like. Because a lot of lawyers, a lot of judges, a lot of law enforcement, a lot of judges staff, a lot of lawyer staff, they're not equipped to deliver care and compassion to address the trauma.
Great.
They don't understand that people come to see a lawyer because they have to. Did you wake up today, Fallon, and say, hey, today's a great day to call a lawyer and spend a lot of money? You know, most people don't. Most people, you know, you don't want a lawyer in your life, but sometimes you reach a level of conflict because you've ignored things in your life, you haven't maintained things in your life, and they get to such a place of conflict and brokenness that our culture has taught you that you have to have a lawyer. Well, part of my message is you don't have to have a lawyer. Let's step back and figure out what we can do to prevent entering trauma town, which is the justice system, right? One of the simple questions I would ask people when they would come to see me because they couldn't stand their husband or their wife anymore, I just want a divorce. Okay. Well, what have you done to maintain your marriage? And their response would be like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, do you have a vehicle? And they're like, yeah. And I said, so do you change the oil on a regular basis? Do you rotate your tires? Do you clean it out? Do you polish her up? Are you proud to drive her when she's, you know, nice and clean? I said, that's a car. Your marriage is the most important relationship, or your relationship with a significant other is the most important relationship you have. So, have you gone to marriage counseling? Oh no, it's too expensive. So let me just.
Divorce is real cheap.
Yeah, let me break that down for you. Most lawyers, we require $5,000 to $10,000 as a retainer, right, just to get it started.
This is Georgia, right? Which
yes,
have a different clientele. I'm sure there's parts of the world where it's
yes,
bigger than that.
Yeah, minimum. I'm telling you, minimum.
Yeah.
Where you could go pay $100 for about 10 hours and save your marriage, have a more fulfilling future compared to what's happening in the legal system. And not only that, but you got married for a reason. I mean, you love this person enough to commit to them for a reason. So let's figure out what's happened. And so that was early into my practicing. But then I noticed a lot of people were coming in 10, 15 years ago because their spouse or a kid had gotten addicted to Oxycontin. And so I started early on before a lot of other people, like being a voice in the wilderness. We have a problem. And 15 years ago, I started really advocating for better treatment resources, better resources for people that are struggling, not just for the individual, but for the family and the support system, which is vital for the recovery of the individual. All along this way, I had already been a student of Dr. Amen. And that came about in probably 1999 or 2000. All three of my children have some form of ADD and ADHD. And 25, 30 years ago, the school system's response was go put them on medication, because that was just the sort of quick answer, the quick and dirty answer to this problem child over here, because the different learning style for each child had not really been adopted. So I was walking through that path because when I did some research on more holistic, more natural ways to address ADHD or ADD, Dr. Amen's name just kept coming up, ordered all his books, watched all the videos. I mean, I've been following him so long that I have every single package he's ever offered on PBS. I'm on the PBS email page or whatever. So I get all of their emails, and I actually have it fixed so that if his name is on there, I know when he's going to be on. So we are big fans and have implemented the Brain Warriors way. We just when that book came out, it was I ordered that because when he started teaching with the actual scientific evidence. Now, remember, I'm trying to do all this just with like theory. It was this theory here and this theory here. But then with the scientific evidence, through all his studies, his partnership with the NFL, connecting brain health, heart health, gut health, I mean, it was just revolutionary. And so I have integrated that into the practice of law, to any sentence that I delivered on the bench, had a strategy to address some of the whys behind why people were in the justice system. I know that you're aware that tragically, there are second and third and fourth generation people who are coming in and out of the justice system. And it's for several reasons. Number one, that's the lifestyle. That's the only lifestyle they've ever known. So it's this generational thing. Number two, the data is clear that adverse childhood experiences drive people to develop mental health disorders or substance abuse, really self-destructive behaviors. Plus, that also contributes to ADD. And what happens to unaddressed trauma and unaddressed ADD is that around 12, 13 years old, when the body starts going through puberty and the chemistry in the body starts changing, children with these disorders can no longer fake it. They can't, they're no longer able to sort of fake it and get by with certain performances on certain tests. And they, at 12, 13, 14 years old, and around 8th and 9th grade, they realize that they can't perform. They don't know why they can't perform. Most of the time they're surrounded in a family that has unaddressed trauma and ADHD that couldn't perform, that were dropouts, so they'll drop out. Well, then they can't find a job, they turn to crime, they turn to substances, and they end up in the courtroom. Right now, when data is released in 2021 for incarceration rates, ages, and the type of crimes that will be published, we're going to see a drastic increase in violent crimes by teenagers. Historically, when you thought about someone who had committed a violent crime or a felony, you would think, like 25, 30 years old. No, try 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And there's a variety of reasons, but the primary reasons are unaddressed trauma, the untreated ADD, generational patterns of behavior, but also just the culture that we're living in. We've got, a culture that worships fancy cars, big jewelry, all of this stuff. Well, you have to work hard to get that.
Right.
But we aren't instilling work ethic either in our youth because we have such a culture of instant gratification. And so there's a lot of combination of factors. But what I love about I'm in clinics, being a brain health coach, is the fact that now I can really weave a tapestry of the hope that I've been delivering for a long time through my work in the community and as an advocate, as an attorney, as a judge, to let people know you don't have to be on 16 prescription medications that are actually doing more damage to your body. You don't have to live with chronic pain for the rest of your life. There's a better way to address whatever you're struggling with. And when you get healthier, your family gets healthier, there's a higher likelihood that you're going to break this generational cycle of, whether it's behavior that has driven people into the justice system or not. The data is clear that it's part of the substance abuse crisis that we're dealing with right now. The data is clear. That's generational. We can break that cycle. So, that's, that's all I try to do is kind of like be like both a beacon of hope, but also like the voice in the wilderness saying there is a better way. Let the legal system be the place of last resort for you to ever enter, ever. I mean, sometimes you don't have a choice, but if you are there or if you've survived it, I also have, the skills and I'm equipped to help people restore their lives and recover from that because it is brutal. There's actually a disorder called legal abuse syndrome. And it was, it's in the DSM. It was coined 20 years ago by this psychotherapist who, and she's someone that I learned from. And she's the one that would try to put it into perspective for all of her patients and clients about your investment in your time with a therapist, understanding why you're having conflict, understanding where it's coming from. And of course, she would try to lead them into the fact that most of the time it's trauma or you're mimicking destructive behaviors that you watched your parents interact through. But if you invest in your health, if you invest in your mental health on the forefront, you can protect yourself from so much more economic, emotional, and physical damage through the process. And, and I think that that's one of the great things that Dr. Alman has created, is he's created a program where, people who think just on the bottom line and that as far as money, oh, that's just too expensive. But then when you put it into perspective about the fact that, you'll have a higher probability of staying off prescription medication. You'll have a higher probability of being the best you can be for your family for a very long time. You have a higher probability of either preventing or slowing down dementia and Alzheimer's, impacting you living your life. These types of what we call recovery capital, which you really can't put a dollar figure on, but they're just as important. And, that's one of the reasons I think Dr. Amen resonates with so many people who understand that doing things in a silo just hasn't worked. We've been doing that a long time. It doesn't work. All our systems need to be talking to each other. And I like the fact that he does the biological, the social, the spiritual, and what's the other one?
Psychological.
Yeah, the psychological. Well, see, and where I come in is that I also drop in like the torture, the emotional torture being in the legal system, and the financial impact. Because it's interesting because I know that there's physicians that are just like some of my legal colleagues, where they don't sit down with their patients with the mindset that, hey, you really don't need my services. What you really need to do is go do ABC. They will say, oh yeah, I can help you, give me your money. But they're not really helping. They're going to be more destructive for your health, wellness, and finances than you just can't even imagine. So, and that's what I love about him, is because he's all about the protective, preventative, be your best. It's real simple. This is the way you can be your best. But it's interesting that there's so many people in our communities that don't even want to accept the scientific evidence that he has, and so many other people have, that your brain can heal itself. You can get better. This doesn't have to be the best your life can be. If you're struggling with addiction, if you're struggling with impulse control, if you're struggling with chronic autoimmune disorder, chronic pain, there's a high probability that that's tied back to your brain health. So addressing your brain health can be just like what radically changes your life and gives you the life that you feel like you should have. So I know I've been rambling on, sorry.
Everything you've said has been amazing, magical. You're just so respected. And for you to have this viewpoint, it's just such an honor to listen to you, honestly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it's interesting.
And I feel so lucky that you're down the street too,
Yes. Yeah. Well, I just think, one of the things that I feel really excited about is, even though the pandemic has really been hard on a lot of people, and I address that with a lot of my podcasts and some of my broadcasts, but it's also forced a lot of people now to be engaging through Facebook Lives or FaceTime or Zoom and things like that. So it's actually given us all an opportunity with a message of hope to have a bigger audience and just get it out there. Because you never know who needs to hear your message. You never know who just needs to hear an encouraging word. When I first started my my practice methodology of trying to save more marriages or situations, even business relationships.
Yeah, and that's like a marriage.
Then letting people get into the justice system, a lot of people would be like, well, you're going to work yourself out of a job. And I'm like, have you looked around in our culture? It's really toxic. I mean, our culture really sort of escalates all of the stress, all of the trauma, all the drama. And so there'll never be not enough business, right? For anybody that's trying to help people who are struggling. Right. And so, but there was a period of time where when you are pushing against the tide, and when you do things that are different than the way everybody else does them, even when it's based on solid methodology, people who want things to stay the same, doctors, lawyers, judges, or they are afraid of change, that, you know, and they can't argue with you about data, about the fact that more people are in jail today because of substance abuse disorder than because they're criminally minded, that these people could be radically changed and be productive citizens and working and having families. When they can't argue with you about data, then they resort back to, you're a wacko, you shouldn't be doing that, you know, that's not what practice and law is all about, blah, 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 right? So I was going through a season, and we all go through seasons like this. And I actually had one of my clients whose marriage I had saved. And I shared with her at the time that, you know, you sharing your news about restoring your marriage has come at a really good time for me, because sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. And this is what she said. She said, I tell everybody that you're a hope dealer, that you have the power to not only help people stay out of the legal system, but the way you presented it to us and the way you made us realize that we're the ones that our marriage is failing, but also we have the power to save our marriage. She said, nobody's ever told us that. And that hope that you gave us, that's going to save our children. And so, you know, when she called me a hope dealer, and a lot of people have called me that before, that's when I knew, okay, even though I may not be aware of everything that we're doing or I'm doing that is really giving a lot of people hope, then other people are really responding to that message. It's making their world a better place, which makes our world a better place. And see,
Exactly.
that's what Dr. Amen does. And that's what he's given us the power to do too, is be tools of delivery of hope. And when you tell somebody, I can probably help you not live in chronic pain for the rest of your life, and 15 other doctors are just telling them, take this medicine, take this medicine. They feel sick on that medicine. That little seed of hope is really what it's all about, because that's what inspires people then to want to make the changes that Dr. Amen recommends. And I've watched some of the other programs that you've had, some of your other podcasts, and you know, the veterans who can benefit from this live their lives full of hope and joy and peace, rather than on medication that makes them feel even worse in all areas of their body and mind. I mean, it's a no loser situation. I mean, and so I'm really excited about making sure that this message gets out to as many people as we can, to prevent more kids from entering the justice system and becoming harder criminals, because that is so stressful for families, and the support system is so necessary. So I'm just really excited about all the services that he has, that the science and the data that he has to back all of that up, because you know, the world can, we can change the world one person at a time. You save one kid, and then you can save the family, and you can save their community. I mean, it's just a very powerful tool.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things that he talks about, is changing families and generations.
Yes. Yes. And it's hard for people to believe that have been raised. I was raised in an intact family who loved me, supported me, encouraged me. I had a warm bed to sleep in every night. I had food on the table every night. I had the ability to share that I was scared about something, happy about something. When I was scared, I had a support system that supported me and told me everything would be okay. When I had something to celebrate, they celebrated with me. That doesn't exist for everybody. There are millions and millions of children in the foster care right now because their parents, through sometimes no fault of their own, became addicted to a substance and have developed mental health disorders and never got the treatment that they needed for childhood trauma or for some horrific incident that happened to them. So, you know, most of our social ills are a result of untreated trauma. It's plain and simple, because there are so many generations who feel and I mentioned this a minute ago, excuse me, from a certain age up, there's still the stigma of shame wrapped up in getting help for yourself, or even seeking help for a child that is struggling with substance abuse or mental health disorder. So what we find is these children don't get treatment. Well, these children have children, right? So we have a lot of grandparents raising their grandchildren because their children never got the help that they needed.
Yeah, I saw that a lot.
So the foster system is overrun, and the grandparents who are able to raise their grandchildren because they're healthy enough or wealthy enough, most of them have to quit their jobs in order to do that. So that impacts the workforce. And if most workplaces, and this is one of the things that I offer through my business, is assisting managers, human resource managers. If you really understood the impact that conflict, substance abuse, and mental health disorder has on your bottom line, you'd be providing world-class resources for your employees. And that would, your productivity goes up, your bottom line improves at a very minimal cost. But see, a lot of workplace managers haven't even been made aware of that. They just think, oh, Sue's having a bad day or Sue's having a bad week, and doesn't realize that bad week could impact her productivity by anywhere between 35 and 70%. Well, that doesn't really impact Sue's pay. What it does is it impacts the manager or the owner's bottom line. So yeah. See, and so it's so interwoven. And you know, I have a tapestry here in the back, and I have a tapestry on purpose because our lives are like tapestries. Every day there's a new thread or two going through, weaving the tapestry for the picture of our lives. And those threads are either very colorful, full of all good things, all positive things, or they're black because you know, negativity, stress, anxiety, chronic illness, unresolved conflict, hopelessness. But if you give somebody the hope, then their tapestry is more colorful. And then everybody that they associate with, including their employer, their children, their spouse, their community, is more colorful. And so the systems need to weave together and need to work together and need to come into the 21st century with all this scientific evidence about how we really need to pay attention to the mental health and well-being of everybody that we're associated with. But, you know, it's easier for the younger generations to embrace that because they have solid members of their age group, like Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps has done more to escalate the credibility of seeking mental health treatment than probably a lot of other people for that generation. I mean, when he came out and embraced his struggles publicly and shared his story, that lifted stigma from so many people that knew they were struggling and gave them the hope and the confidence to seek the treatment that they needed. And there's nothing to be ashamed of, but culturally, we've kind of created this sort of fog of shame. And we just need to lift that. We need to share our story so everybody knows there is hope. There's hope for anybody that's struggling. There's hope for the bruised and the brokenhearted. We're the face. You and I are the face of the bruised and brokenhearted. But we were wise enough to connect with resources, information, treatment, and methodologies that would help us stay healthy and help us stay joyful.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave off. You were just amazing today. I mean, everything you said, just so wonderful. And I'm hoping that we get a lot of people seeing this because it's such an important message. Like you said, everybody is connected, everything is connected. And if we can give hope and resources, then one person at a time, we're going to make the world a better place.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
How can people find you?
Okay. I'm on all social media as Prevailing Matters. My website is www.prevailingmatters.com. And I chose that name. I just started this business, just launched this business actually in January, because people haven't been equipped or taught that they have the power to prevail over any challenge, any conflict, any struggle. And so that's the message, just like we talked about today, is that you can overcome. You do not have to just linger in your mess. You don't have to stay in the darkness. Don't be somebody that tolerates stuff. You know, let's throw out that junk. Let's be an overcomer. So and there's just real simple steps that people can start on that journey. Some people need a little bit more intensive help than others, but like I said before, there's a lot of people don't take the time to teach themselves or learn or connect with resources like you and Amen Clinics and follow Dr. Amen and just implement his wisdom. So, but Prevailing Matters, and we specialize in supporting and helping people that find themselves in conflict. And our mission is to keep people out of the legal system, support people if they're already in the legal system, and help people restore their lives if they've been broken by the legal system. So that's, you know, there's not a lot of resources out there that are specific to addressing some of that, but that's what we're trying to do. It's just really help people.
Well, I'm excited, and your new website is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Love
you.
it.
Okay. Well, I'm really excited. I'm really proud to be a brain health coach through Amen Clinics. He has so much wisdom, and he's done so much for people that have struggled with some of these chronic illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Really building awareness and exposing the fact that your mind, your brain, your heart, and your gut are all connected, and you have the power over your health and wellness. I mean, that's really the impactful message that he delivers to people, is that you don't have to rely on medication. You don't have to rely on a doctor. You can do this. And sometimes you need a guide like you and like me, but people really have the power over that. And it's just really good to be connected with people like you, Fallon, that you're a hope deliverer too. Your story's fantastic, and you're a survivor, you're a thriver, and you know, that's what we can help everybody do, is just get them out of their pain and out of their brokenness and help them thrive.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much. You're amazing.
Well, I love you. Thanks for having me.
Love you too.
Okay.
Have a great weekend. Hopefully it's going to stay nice for us.
Yes.
In the gym.
Okay.